Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Sales Entrepreneur Podcast. I am Daniel McComber, and with me today is Kevin Swiss. He is the Chief Marketing Officer at Nusun currently, but you've had a lot of titles in this industry over the past few years. Tell me a little bit about the different places you've been.
Love it. So first, obviously, thanks for having me on your show.
Thanks.
I love to, support entrepreneurship and, people out there trying to kind of chase down and innovate. So thanks for having me. Yeah. I mean, I'm sneaky old, Dan. I'm 45, almost 46.
You're not. Are you
yeah,
really?
Uh-huh.
In my due diligence, I did not come across that fact.
Yeah. Well, in this industry, you put on a hat, turn it backwards, and try to pretend that you're younger. But the reason I bring that up is because, it's been sometimes I feel like it is time to retire. Not yet, but so my background in general, I actually started on the doors way back. So usually I drop this, well, what were you doing in 2002, Dan?
I was 7 years old.
There it is.
And in California, just living the dream in elementary school.
That's right. Well, in 2002, I was a rookie. I was knocking for Apex Alarm, Todd Peterson's company at the time, before it was Vivint.
Yeah.
And I was in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And on my second day in market, that evening at like 7 p.m., I sold my first account to this guy named Steven Schlink. He was a pilot. And I was in Minnetonka.
Remember his name.
Yep.
Wow.
Can't forget the first sale, even though it literally was about 23 summers ago.
Wow.
And, I sold that summer, did well. I managed in 2003 for Apex I did half the summer in DC and then the other half in St. Louis. And a lot of times with my kind of corporate background, you'll always hear people say, hey, like, how'd you get into marketing and how did this happen? And did you ever really knock? It's like, oh yeah, like I absolutely, went out and knocked. Anyway, but I was studying advertising at BYU and my background was in media production. And, I grew up loving, making skate videos and little sketches with my friends in the summertime and digital video was pretty new back in the early 2000s. And, so that was my passion and is actually what I was studying. But, I had kind of gone down this road of, you need money. And, to be honest, I needed a place to live in summer. It's so hard in a college town to like lock up the good housing.
That's so true.
And so when you need to go work, you're like, okay, well, I can't go live in my parents' basement. I got to figure something out. And then that's when someone said, hey, we're going to have these amazing apartments in Minnesota and do sales.
But I mean, it wasn't even in Provo, it wasn't a huge thing back then. No. Door to door, like there was one company, I guess, doing it. I mean, Todd literally pioneered it.
Yeah.
And so how did you even get connected to that idea? Didn't it sound crazy?
No. So, I mean, yeah, it was more of a case of you were the type of person like, I would never, ever do that. Because there were people I knew, I did student government in college and, you always thought you had everything outsmarted. You didn't understand what sales was. You thought I've got charisma, I'm a leader, I'm confident. And you're just like, that's all that it takes.
Yeah, surely that'd be good at it.
You're dead wrong, you know? So they would say back then it was all pest. Alarms was kind of the thing that didn't really exist.
Yeah.
And so you'd be on campus and you'd see in the paper, the pictures of the individuals with how much money they made. And they're all going down to Arizona, to go knock. And I was like, heck no, I'm going home to Sandy. I'm going home to hang out with my friends. That's the last thing in the world I'll ever want to do. But, when you start your life and you get married and you kind of go down the road of like, hey, I need some answers. Then suddenly it's like, hey, this actually could be interesting. And you think I'm going to, take, my general people skills and leadership skills and somehow that would work in sales, which was a rude awakening for me because it doesn't transition that easily.
Yeah, it didn't happen right away.
No, there's a whole skill set you have to learn.
Wow. So were you married before you went on your first summer?
That was kind of the reason. It was getting an answer there.
Oh, wow.
It was like like less than a year or something like that.
Yeah. So it sounds like that first summer you had a lot riding on it.
Yeah, but I'm a little bit of a free spirit and like just, a generally confident person. And it was like, I'd say the experience was hard. And I would say that, there was some anxiety, but I think anyone who's done sales knows the feeling of like K correlations in 30 minutes. Like I got to do this thing.
Mhm.
But, as far as the summer was concerned, um, I don't know. I think when you're way down the road in life, everything seems like we had not a care in the world. So thinking back that while I was writing, it didn't feel like it.
Yeah.
It was more like, hey, the world's at our fingertips.
Well, I mean, it was a means to an end for you at that point, right?
Yeah. I mean, the goal was like I said, to be honest, it was like I didn't know where we were going to live. And so when they
Right.
said, hey, housing's all figured out, I was like, okay, well, what are we doing? Like, I
Yeah.
just wanted a great place to get there, live for the summer, and get back to college.
Yeah, get back to what your passion was, right? And that's pretty awesome that you were able to figure out what your passion was at an early point, and then college aligned with that. So many times you hear guys that will have a passion and then they'll go to college and they realize that's not what they want to do, or vice versa. They have this idea of what they want to do, they go to college and they realize they got to change and go a different direction.
Yeah, I think it's, like I think back and, everyone, we all need money, and it would be nice to, get a good return on every hour we did or that we worked. And I think that was kind of the challenges, definitely in early, I didn't know what I wanted to do. Like when they're like, hey, you go to school and hopefully you'll figure something out during the 4 years of college that is a career path direction. I think it didn't occur to me. And that was, that was the cool value that doing the sales brought. Was I loved making videos, and I was on the very, very front end. I mean, this is for iPhones and all that type of stuff. Right.
Yeah.
And, the idea of taking digital video and bringing it to the industry, that's kind of where I got my shot, because I had the credibility of knocking doors and getting in, to the network. And this is going to blow your mind if you look at all these companies with their awards nights and their personal brands on Instagram and their own swag collections and their competitions and their activities and hangouts. And I mean, the whole thing. Like when I was knocking, recognition was the owners literally typing a newsletter, putting it in the mail, and mailing it out to the 12 offices. And the manager would read the stats to the team on a Saturday correlation. I'm not exaggerating. Yes, they would travel out and go visit, but the weekly recognition was literally done by mail. I mean, we're bordering on, it's almost like Pony Express. That's about how close it was. So when I came from the college background and studying advertising and doing student activities, I had knocked for 2 summers, and then I went to, the leaders of Apex and said, hey, I actually think there's an opportunity here. Back then, there wasn't any real social media presence. Web 2 hadn't launched. It was, this concept of DVDs. Like that's what was the distribution channel. And so I had pitched this idea of saying we could do incredible training. We could do incredible recruiting media. We just need to make a little bit of investment. And that was kind of the beginning of like media use in the sales space.
That's a pretty crazy pitch for that time too. Like going to, I guess was it straight to Todd?
Yep.
So you're going to Todd and you're pitching something that's kind of unheard of. It's all, I dare say revolutionary.
Oh, it was.
And you're just, and you have no idea if that'll actually benefit the company. Like it might be a lot of work for good intentions, but at that point, it didn't seem like there was like a proven track in any capacity.
Well, I think the thing that was like, I knew what it could do because I'd seen it at school. Like, we were working with these cameras, I'm thinking about back then, it's my Sony, P150 or the Canon GL2, like these, anyone who knows media, it was the idea of getting one of those, $3,000 cameras in your hands when you have no money is just, that was adrenaline. That was dopamine itself. However, the question is like, I didn't realize the amount of kind of budgets Todd had at this point in his business. And for him, 14,000 was nothing. For me, it was life-changing.
Wow.
So I was kind of talking with one of the corporate leaders, and he's like, hey, maybe we could do a thing. You get so many recruits, and then Todd can give you different pieces of equipment. And I said, well, let me put together a pitch. So I go in and meet with them, and I kind of tell him the value. And I say to him, imagine if instead of, and I could drop names, but these individuals up in front of the group, doing a training or a printed training manual. Imagine if we could actually produce and shoot them in homes with stage customers and really set the stage on how the sales cycle works. and bring up the objections and bring up the transitions and showcase a variety of learning tactics and profiles. And he was like, that's done. Like, what do we need? And I was like, okay, I'm going to need a G4, which was this, this Apple tower, with kind of the glass, kind of translucent thing, which again, if you're into it, it's like, if I had that, it would change my life. You're so excited. And I said, I'm going to need, we're looking at these mics. It's like, I'm going to need like, a boom pole stick and, like a mic. And then, the camera that I wanted to get was this, setup. It was this P150, and the whole bill turned out to be about $14K, which again, that was a lot of money back then.
Yeah.
The most wealthy sales rep in the industry of all industries made $93K. Like, think about that. Just only 93. That was like, his name was Bo Pathworth. He was the best rep in the industry in 2002. Anyway, Todd's like, let's do it. And I said, and here's the catch. I was like, I'll produce anything for Apex for free, but you let me keep the equipment because that's the business that I want to start.
Wow.
And he was like, that seems totally fair. But here's the best part. I had only used the college gear, like directing and creative directing and stuff. I'd never actually done the shooting and editing. So I had basically said, I can produce all this stuff. I was like, if you put it in my hands, I will figure it out. So I faked it till I made it. And so over the next 2 months, I trained myself in the Final Cut Pro to actually do the
because there's no YouTube videos back then.
Nope.
There's no tutorials.
No, there wasn't.
The only way that you could get experience was hands-on.
That's right.
And so you knew, okay, like you didn't have $14,000 to invest in the equipment, and you probably knew what it would take to make 14 grand to get the equipment. And that's just an insane amount of work. And so you used what you knew, and you were able to get the equipment in your hands, and that's how you got.
Well, if you want to talk about it, I'm sitting here now on the other side. The famous story is, or at least in my small little world, is 23 summers later, I learned that it's not just charisma or confidence. Confidence is the foundation of everything, but it's an actual skill set. It's an actual, like, learning the sales process of that, that back and forth set of understanding and creating like an exchange. Right. And what I'm saying is like, I had gone and knocked and learned that process, and like mixing that with kind of pitching something where it's like, if I can show him the value, if I can paint a picture of the value, he's like, I will spend 50 grand on that. Wow. And so long story short, I produced this cutting edge media, and it was really groundbreaking for, Apex and us at the time. And we pivoted then, and it was scalable. So now everyone, no matter where they were watching the best trainers in our company on these DVDs and their profiles, which, there's a long history now of every company having training media, right?
Well, at the time, did you realize the impact that you were actually having on the industry?
For sure, no. But what was cool is that, it progressed where I did it for a year, and I went out and managed that next summer. And you talk about what you're passionate about. I was passionate about this company that I had seen in my head it could work, because I'm all, if I could do it for them. But here was the problem. Can I go back to who's now an amazing mentor, who's basically opened the door to make my dreams come true, and say, how would you feel if I go pitch your competitors and offer this product to them? And
based on your $14,000 investment.
Yeah, and it's not exclusive anymore. And Todd this is like of thousands of stories of every person who's ever been blessed by him or helped by him. He was like, I love it.
No way.
He was like, that's why I started this company, is to help get people where they're supposed to go. And that's amazing. And not an ounce of scarcity at all. He knew I was going to go basically hand over this really cool kind of technology platform to people that were recruiting his people. And he didn't care because he felt like I had created the value. We had a partnership, and he basically said, as long as you keep, delivering new stuff for us and keep us as a client, he's all, I love that you actually get to your passions through working for me. And I'm all, amazing.
That man, gosh. I was at Vivint for, I think, 8 years. And everyone says like the glory days and stuff like that. I was there, before the sale and then during the sale and stuff like that. It was tons of fun. But it's crazy. Like you just said, you hear story after story about how that guy blessed other people. But shoot, I can't even think about where the industry would be or that company would be without you taking that risk. Yeah, because there's a huge potential that you were not going to be able to figure that out, but you had the confidence that you could figure it out. And you're saying that you kind of you say sales kind of helped you with that a little bit, but I'm sure there was other things that went into it that you said, you know what, I have confidence in myself. I'm going to bet on myself that I can make this work.
Yeah, well, I can definitely tell you as a young person, you know, it's hard, at least for a creative person like me. You're a procrastinator. You're late to everything. You know, and on and on. You're messy in your house, and but then in general, you a lot of times have like certain ability to, you know, change the tone in a room or have a vision when others are like, I need you to sort of tell me what to do and then I'll go do it.
Mm.
But you can kind of, you can see things a little bit. And I promise you, this is 100% not some type of like, hey, it was nothing, because I do think that there was a role to play.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of it was lucky that I happened to be in the right sort of frame of mind and position where none of that had come around yet. You look at it now, I mean, there's just so many ideas and innovations that someone would have done it. Like, you know what I mean? The technology would have come out.
Sure.
And even today, companies like, hey, we need that. Like, how do we get that here?
Yeah.
But, you know, to happen to randomly be, you know, the individual who had that interest and had a little bit of the know-how to work for, you know, the greatest company to do it, like in this space, like I say it proudly.
Absolutely.
You know, Vivint is the source. You'll hear it hundreds and hundreds of times.
Mm-hmm.
But that particular piece, you know, culture design, you know, internal marketing, you know, media that drives performances. And there's a whole other tale about gamifying the space and all that. But all those things, it was very, very fortunate that God, the universe, you know, myself kind of got lucky and I was prepared to have an idea. I was able to say it to him in the right way that piqued his interest. And he was like, I'll invest in that.
Yeah.
And it turned into a really, really great career for me, but it definitely has played a huge role in a lot of these companies being able to create their communities and, you know, make it fun, you know?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, that's kind of how me and you actually met originally years ago was I was going to school and I hit up Cody Babel.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, dude, I need an internship. I need to prove that I've done some kind of internship to get into the Marriott School of Business.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, cool, no problem. What do you need? I'm like, well, at the time I was going to go in global supply chain management. I then later pivoted to entrepreneurial management because that's way more what I was going to do. If I was going to have a backup plan, I wanted to be a backup plan that I actually do. So he put me in the supply chain department and it was a 4-hour a week internship. I asked him, like, can you just make it as little as possible because I want to go out on preseason trips and recruit and stuff. So he put me in there. And at that time, I think you were working, or you were the head of the competition space, right? And I was looking, I'm like, holy crap. Like, you guys aren't seeing the relationship between when us sales guys have competitions and when you guys have these high peaks in demand for product. And so anyways, I've reached out to you and one of the reasons why, I don't know, you just always had like an impression on me was I was like a sales dude that, I mean, I did pretty good numbers, but I wasn't like a big name at Vivint or anything like that. I was a sales guy that was doing a small internship with the supply chain department. Reached out to you, I'm like, hey, I have this idea that could possibly bridge the gap between these two things. And you're just all for it. And I see now from the story that you just said and what you said at the beginning, where you welcome entrepreneurial spirit and innovation. I guess that's who you are. You are an innovator. And that's something that you constantly did while you were at Vivint, it sounds like. Because obviously you took the time and you built that you built out that video platform and everything for different companies. Eventually you came back full-time to Vivint, right? But under a different role.
Yeah. So what had happened was I had started my company. It was called Glass9 Media. And after 2 years, we were the agency for anyone that mattered in the door-to-door space. You know, you kind of look at like, say, a door-to-door experts or door-to-door con, the Sam Teggets of the world. They're like, hey, I have this passion to kind of like work with everyone. That's kind of what I ended up doing for about 3 years, where, you know, anyone that was, you know, a real powerhouse at the time, Pinnacle, First Line, you know, Apex, Icon, Atlas, whoever it might have been. We worked with them. But then one of the clients, you know, had this idea saying, hey, we'd love to, you know, buy your company and kind of pull you out of the space, almost like a move, like, hey, if we could like get a monopoly on this.
The opposite of what Todd Peterson had done
Yeah,
before.
but it was interesting. Like I actually thought it was I was being opportunistic because that would have been the quote unquote my first acquisition.
Right.
It was like this is a lot of money back then. It was like 700K.
Wow.
And
That's a lot of money anytime.
yeah, well, that's funny. But then I got to do the thing where then we essentially brought it in house. I became their VP of media at the time, and kept it going. But what we found was that the stuff we were doing for that company was so good that the owners were like, "Hey, let's spin off a new media studio." And this is the one you can actually see that's on my LinkedIn now. It's called Decade Media, and we had about 45 to 50 clients. Did about 2 million in annual revenue. We were a studio in Provo, Salt Lake, and this was kind of all leading in kind of pre-recession. It was around 2005, 2006.
Oh, okay.
And so, it's kind of funny when we're talking about this. I'm like, I'm not really an entrepreneur. In the early days, I actually kind of was an entrepreneur.
Yeah, you were. Look at you,
Yeah.
creating businesses.
So did that. But it was kind of like, and this is what's fun. So we acquired a small web design firm called One Studio. And One Studio, we were doing not quite native apps yet at this point, but like mobile websites.
Right.
And that's where the idea for the competition generated when I came back to Apex, as their creative director in fall 2007, because I kind of like went on that venture. You kind of bring on partners, that classic story so many entrepreneurs have where like, hey, pick the right partners, pick the right, all that stuff.
You picked the wrong partners.
I mean, it's more a case of you discover a little bit that you have a lot of learning and evolution, and there's just you're naive, to be honest. You reach a certain status at a little bit, and I am 100% not one of those guys who comes and things like, and I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, but I hear these people that are like, I've had like hundreds of millions, and then I lost it all. And then I had hundreds of millions and I lost it all. And, and I'm like, okay, so did you really have it? Or you must have really driven the ship off the cliff to like, and then I just and there was like 40 million. And by the end of the day, it was gone. It's like, you never had it. Like, that's not how it works. But I would say that like, I was in a scenario where the actual network I had and the people I was working with, there was just aspects where we were, and this is why I in a kind of responsible way will say, and I talked about this, what are people's motivation when they're like, I want to be a hustler, I want to get the side hustle going? It's like, what are they trying to do?
Yeah.
Like, what's driving them? Is it really the creating value thing they say? Is because they want to become rich? Is because they like the attention? They want kind of the fame of like, my idea worked, my idea was sold, it was bought. When you go through like true destruction where networks fall apart and you find out like some of the dark side, to be totally real, it kind of scared the crap out of me. And it scared me right back into like, I have a better talent of being an executive for someone else than going down this road of like, I'll lose it all and I'll rebuild it tomorrow. I was like, no, actually, I have a skill to like make others great versus me being that person. That was my choice. And that's what I'd say about entrepreneurship is it's like, it really is just decisions. And it's about, do you really know yourself? And sometimes people like really get some jarring learnings about who they think they want to be and who they maybe are and like who they're trying to become, all that stuff.
Well, you learned all those lessons as you brought on partners and you figured all this out. And so you made that's a pretty tough decision to leave the thing that you built, because that's what you did.
Yeah. I mean, it is, but when you're kind of, this is what happens. People have different opinions on how to run the company. And then you go through, say, like a tough year and it's like, hey, we've got these heavy salaries at the top. We maybe can only afford one of them. What do we think? Like, we'll take a pay cut, and you got the one partner that's like, hey, I'm kind of running things. And you met him in the founder, but I'm the president, those types of conversations. And you hit a certain point where you're kind of like, I don't know, like it kind of all happens quick. But yeah, so everything kind of fell apart. And then I kind of went back to Todd and was kind of went through this experience and said, hey, I came up with some things that are interesting on the gamification side. And I'm not just video anymore. I'm websites as well. And he was like, this is 2007. He's like, well, we don't have any organized marketing. We're third partying stuff. We're outsourcing stuff. We're freelancing stuff. Why don't you come in and actually put together a department?
Yeah.
So met Alex Dunn, met Sean Brenchley, like all these kind of mentors of mine. And Alex gave me like an $800,000 budget the first year as creative director.
Nice.
hired Corey Sistrunk, hired a bunch of others and went for it. And then until just a few months ago, I've been at Vivint running, marketing and culture and performance for, 16 years.
Yeah. Well, I mean, anyone who's been at Vivint for the past 16 years knows K-Swiss, and that's the crazy thing. Do you think that Todd would have had you back in any capacity? I mean, kind of for what you did with him at the beginning, if you went to Todd and you said, hey, listen, I have an idea for X, Y, and Z. He's the kind of guy that invests in people, I feel like.
Sure.
And so I think based on you and your experience you had with him before and your proven track record, even though you had just left the company that you had built, that's probably was inconsequential. Do you think that he would have had you back because he invested in you?
Well, to be honest, it's an interesting story because, again, the big buzzword is be vulnerable. And by the way, again, I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings because I'm going to get on here and
love it.
I'm a little cold and blunt,
That's why people like you.
I think that, what we see today is, I think that we could use a fresh breath of sort of responsibility. I feel like there's a little too much sound bathing going on, a little bit too much, spa and zen. That's not me, but I know that other people, and again, if it's creating value and there's a demand, do it, but that's just not my style.
No, not at all.
But I do have a point in telling you, when I came to him, I remember it was like, we kind of talked through and I kind of told him the ideas. And this time it was a little different. He was like, it's kind of a famous moment for me in my career. Again, back to the sales thing.
Yeah.
We sat down and I told him kind of the general ideas of the competitions and the idea of the cup and podcasting, which didn't exist. We're sitting in a podcast, like, mine was literally the first in the space. It didn't really have it back then, but I kind of told him, the number that I needed to make. And to be honest, it was based on the fact of how overextended I'd become in those early 2000s with like keeping up with the lifestyle and like, when are you going to get, a Range Rover and a Mercedes, and all these things. And, all this stuff that everyone's saying, like, we can't lose, we're invincible, like foolish, naive decision-making that Todd wasn't a part of actually at the time. The famous story with him is he was, he's driving a stock, truck and he was renting a house and like, it's
the Todd that you see now is not the Todd that was pre-2010.
Yeah, but he was smart and he made it happen that way. But what happened in that room was there was a bunch of individuals, and I can tell you, and if you want to get vulnerable on a podcast, the crew that was splitting from that company, there was a unit of them. Doug Robinson, Dave Forrest, Jeff Mendes, Casey Baugh, like they were the unit, and they have had a major, influence on the overall outcome of the entire industry.
Absolutely.
And we had this meeting in Doug Robinson's backyard, or not his backyard, his house, which was next to mine in the neighborhood where, Todd lived for a long time, Cove Estates.
Yeah.
And anyway, they had kind of essentially had made their decision, that they were going to go with Pinnacle at the time, which was before Protection One bought them and all that stuff. This is all pre-solar. Mm-hmm. And long story short, they hadn't even met with Todd and none of them knew him. Casey he didn't know Todd. Oh. And I was sitting there with them and I'm this weird adjacent piece in this mix because I have no downline, no sales reps. I was the culture guy.
Yeah.
And to be honest, most of these leaders, like they want the downlines, like that's where the value is in the sales force. But I was kind of this sort of like, oh yeah, like Swiss is here kind of with us. Yeah. And, we're all feeling scared to death because it's a bad time for the economy and these guys had mismanaged their company. But I was trying to help my friends kind of land where they wanted to go because the company had, 500 sales reps that were going to go somewhere. So I actually had Todd's number and I said, hey, I can set up a meeting. And so you always hear the famous story of like Jeff and Casey with Alex and Todd, like till the middle of the night. But it was like, I actually hit up Todd and said, hey, I'm sitting here with these guys. Like, will you meet with them?
Yeah.
And he's like, I'd love to. So we rolled over to Todd's rental property, like 1:30 in the morning and had this meeting. And it was really interesting to watch, but his candor was trustworthy. He didn't sugarcoat it.
Yeah.
We had people recruiting saying, we'll make you like regional divisional president of the East Coast, like through the door. And Todd's like, we might let you co-manage an alarm office to see if you can handle this product because you've been selling TV, which is not alarms.
Yeah.
And two of the individuals in the room, that resonated hard. And two of the others, it didn't.
Yeah.
And that's when it split. But the problem is like I didn't have a downline. So then I had this.
So where are you going to go?
So I had this famous moment where I'm feeling just not good, tons of anxiety, lots of crying that day, trying to figure it out. And I'll never forget this, like again, don't know what you're going to do. You got a family, you got young children, and basically you've got a lot of financial responsibilities, and where you've been is kind of coming to an end.
Yeah. You're starting a new chapter.
Yeah. And I go driving, just trying to figure things out. And I drive past the Apex building and all their cars are there. And it's like snowing. I'll never forget it. Like a secret meeting.
Oh.
So I'm like driving by and see that they're there having a meeting that I wasn't told about and wasn't invited to.
Yeah.
And so my heart sunk and I was like, what the heck, like what is happening? Like I connected them, like, what I mean? Like what? And I go into the building and roll up and I'm telling you, they're like coming out. They're like, what's up, Kev? Like, hey, like, what's up, my dog? You know what I mean? And I remember just feeling this feeling of like, you know what I mean? Like something was betraying me,
betrayed,
type moment. That kind of all settled. We figured that out. And then I got a message from Todd that was like, hey, look, we're figuring out your thing. It's different, obviously. Like come in on Tuesday, like we'll meet. But I just felt this like I'm going to throw up,
Yeah.
Cause it's like, hey, I helped get it going. And then I thought these were all my buddies. And then they went and did a deal without me.
Something without you.
So anyone that's out there that's been through that, like I personally, that was one of the moments like that.
Well, did you not want to take the meeting with Todd? Were you kind of like spiteful? Like, I
don't
don't even know if I want to meet with you.
Again, I was, you're a little bit in desperation, but you kind of, you understand. But that's the thing about me. There wasn't really an entitlement. It just hurt my feelings like extremely.
Yeah.
I wasn't a sales leader. I didn't have the downlines. And that's where the leverage is for these businesses. That's where the money resides. That's why they will always get paid what they get paid.
Yeah.
Because of that skill set.
Yep.
Now I have a special skill set, but it's still not, the recruiting skill set is the most valuable skill set in the game. Mm-hmm. So I met with Todd, and this is a big circle conversation, but we met on the Tuesday and I explained to him all the stuff.
Yeah.
And this is what he says to me, like it was yesterday. Well, like, I don't understand all this. I mean, it sounds like it will do what it is, but like what you're asking for and the amount I was asking for was because that's what I needed because of like all, like I say, the foolish lifestyle choices.
You need to maintain it.
And well, I needed to like have an answer while I tried to like de-lever, you know what I mean? And unload like this stupidity of these young, invincible entrepreneurs that, like, oh yeah, like just, you really show that you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And he was trying nicely to kind of say, I've seen this. Yeah. I know what's happening to you. I don't know if I want a moral hazard and just reinforce like, oh yeah, it's fine. You kind of get the Apex bailout.
Right.
But he said like, and so we made a deal. I said, listen, my programs need at least 2 years before you can make a truly informed decision on whether it's working or not.
Of course.
I'm talking about the competitions, the culture, the performance metrics, the media marketing. I was like, but there will always be, and I listed a bunch of big names in sales. There's going to be tons of those individuals.
Yeah.
But there's not going to be someone who does what I do. Are you going to want to be, and this sounds bold, but I said, are you going to want to be the person who let K-Swiss end up at Pinnacle versus here? And he's all, it's done. We're doing it. Like, that's what, And I was like, well, can I talk to my wife? He's like, yes, of course. But like, it's done. And I felt like I closed Todd Peterson. Like it was a cool moment for me. Right. Yeah. And then, we had that, and that was fall of 2007. And we launched the competitions in the website the next year. And
what a perfect year to start launching those competitions. I mean, literally, because I've heard other stories about the industry during 2008, 2009, 2010.
Yeah.
And the craziness, the insecurity, people didn't know, or the insecurity, they didn't know, how, I mean, sales churned crazy during that time period, during the recession, right?
Yeah,
so, I mean, that had to have been I should say perfect, but that had to have been an amazing time to introduce competitions and this new culture to a space that probably desperately needed it.
Yeah, well, what I would say is, and this is why Vivint, again, is the source, like, Vivint is the Nike, Vivint is the Michael Jordan. It just is what it is.
Yeah.
But it was a partnership. And I mean that in the least corny way possible. My new partners at Nusun, incredible leaders, like respect them immensely. The idea of like, well, where would I go next? It's like the decision, once I kind of saw the full vision where they're going, it was an easy decision for me. Yeah. but they were at Vivint as well in that middle time period. And we call it Rome. Like basically anyone who mattered, anyone with talent at their peak were all at the same company at the same time.
Yep.
And it was the greatest era of this job. Now, it doesn't mean that there's not new things coming, and people are doing a lot of amazing stuff.
Yeah.
But eventually, you get these amazing other startups that take place and everyone kind of heads where they're headed.
Yeah.
But during that time period, definitely, again, it was the partnership. It was the right partner, Todd, his company, Alex, all those guys. I'm so grateful that we teamed up, because there's no way what I had to offer could have been realized at the level with anyone else. And I think that I was the right person with the right background for them to kind of bring on to help drive that forward.
Go somewhere where you can continue to innovate.
I just believe the different opportunities are suited for the people that choose what fits them. And there's a very, very incredible opportunity there. For me personally, I had literally just accomplished everything I set out to do. And there's a certain point where for yourself and for everyone else, it's like, this is a little bit bizarre. Like you say to these imposter syndrome, even after everything you accomplish, it's like, this is starting to look like you don't know how to do anything else. You know what I mean? But the big thing was, I call them championships, got the Blackstone one, we went public with the IPO, caught the NRG one, helped that on that last year. We had our best year we've ever had in direct to home. And it was time. And there wasn't another position. Like, I'd made VP, which was something I'd chased for over 10 years, which was really hard to do at a major company like that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
To get the call from Todd and say, I'm so happy that you've made it here. I know what this has meant to you. Did that for 3 years. There was nothing left. And you got to have, what's next for me? What's going to challenge me? And, and definitely there was a bit of like good timing for both sides. But Vivint, I mean, anyone that is a hater that isn't going to like, I'm just saying, be smart.
Yeah.
Headlines are bullshit. They just are. So I have nothing but positive things to say.
Well,
because
it sounds like you're a different person too. I mean, you're a completely different person with different goals and different things you're trying to accomplish. And so that doesn't necessarily mean that the company was at fault whatsoever. It's just, it sounds like Kevin Swiss was a different human and you're looking at achieving different things.
No, I mean, again, for sure. And like I said, it's all about fit. And so it's kind of like there's a very specific type of leader, specific type of rep, specific type of employee that is a great fit there. And then there are others that are not at all.
Yeah.
And there are other companies where it's like, hey, it just really, like I said from the beginning of my story, it's about knowing who you are. And when I came on, it's like, hey, if you're this, this, and this, and we're this, this, and this, you will thrive. Over time, when you kind of check those boxes, accomplish those goals, you change. Eventually, you're like, hey, I'm not in the full thrive position.
Yeah.
Because like you say, it's like you're different. But, for those individuals that can dominate and thrive in a company like that, by all means, it's the right place to be. Yeah. But for others, it's like they're running as fast somewhere else because they need to fit in at a different place that has different goals.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, I feel like that's such a hard thing to realize about yourself is when you realize that your time at a place has come to an end.
Yeah.
I mean, even for me, like when I left Vivint, I have nothing but great things to say. I freaking loved it. But for me,
can I just say this one thing? I apologize for jumping in here, but this is really important to think through. Having gone through in the early days, what it looks like when you partner up with a company that like doesn't make wise choices and set down a good base. Yeah. We've seen an industry recently where, I mean, the list of companies filing BK, I saw these guys on Instagram and I'm one of the incentive kings, right? Who's figured out how to gamify and motivate people beyond the paycheck.
Yeah.
And I see them with like, we're the first ones to give out a fully paid for like blue supercar Lamborghini. Is like $1 million car. Yeah. And it was like all over. Like literally 4 months later, like the whole thing went out of business. Like that's happened a gazillion times. And so I just, I think it's important to give homage and respect to not just, hey, what does a business accomplish like a Vivint, but they did it with the stability that it's like anyone that's ever been affiliated or worked there or anything, like we owe so much of who we are today and what we're accomplishing. Yeah. And anyone who doesn't give that credit is full of crap.
Absolutely.
Because the reality is like, yeah, people's lives change and what they need to go do needs to keep going in different ways.
Yeah.
but to pretend on some level, you know what I mean, that like you somehow got to where you are on your own
Yeah,
without
that's
like
insane.
the company like that like held it together, where everyone else, like I've been through,
Yeah.
like idiots like, oh yeah, let's do this and this. And it's like, you know, if you've ever sat down across from someone and they say something like this, well, if you didn't do your due diligence, that's on you. Like I've
Oh
been in
boy.
that meeting.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And it's
Mhm.
like when you have someone who's actually, we won't put people in that situation. We
Yeah.
will create a platform that creates 250,000 jobs over 30 years.
Mhm.
You got to respect it.
Well, I think honestly, and what I'm getting from your stories as well too is like, yeah, the company was great, but I think it sounds like the people. I mean, to give you an idea, when I left Vivint, I'm still working with the same people that I was at Vivint with, in one capacity or another.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because I was invested in those people, and those people were built from that company. But at the same time, when we figured out that it wasn't a fit for us anymore, I'm like, you know what? I'm sticking with these people.
Yeah.
I mean, these are the people that I've been through ups and downs with, and I'm going to ride with. And so I feel like that's a huge thing that you're saying too, is like the people that came from and built that are the ones that you wanted to be with.
Yeah. And that's, to be honest, that's where I am today. Like,
Yeah.
you know, Nusun 100% is the future premier brand in the space,
Mm-hmm.
because, you know, you've got these companies that we all made great together and kind of squeeze that lemon until there's like nothing left to squeeze. And of course the value, it's like an ore mine that's in the ground that will just always pump out amazing ore forever. And so whoever's involved, you're going to have like a great opportunity. Yeah. Great opportunity to create value and be rewarded for that value.
Yeah.
But those that are in their prime that want to go build, you know, and go do something kind of for the first time that hasn't done, and like be able to have your hands right on that, you know, that's, to be honest, what I'm kind of hungering, and like real entrepreneurship. And so it's kind of like, you know, this opportunity to partner, you know, at Nusun Power is all about that. It's not like it's kind of saying, I want a chance to be in some of those seats where, you know, you lay it all on the line and you go win on the big level. We kind of joke around. We're like, you know, this is like 2008 Apex. Like that's where we're going. You know,
it's the thrill. And that's one reason why entrepreneurship is so sought after. It's the thrill of something new, doing something innovative and creative, and in a different light than you've seen before.
Yeah.
Right. And, you know, I think there's very few people that have a very candid conversation like we're having now.
Yeah.
But honestly, this is where you get growth.
Yeah.
When you have hard conversations about current situations and you decide, you know what, there's more that could be pulled from this space. There's things that we could do differently in this space. And that only comes from having hard, frank, blunt conversations about the industry or a specific company.
My son is knocking his third summer. He's 21. He's going out with Vivint third summer. He's in Denver this year. Had a great year last year in Kansas City, with the Bay Area before that. So number one, the idea of like being around long enough that you, and building a company where you would trust to send your own kids to do that tough job, really special, right? There's a picture on my Instagram that shows us together. I was out on the doors with them last year. We put in like 4 deals. I mean, it was just magic stuff.
Way.
Magic, right?
That's goals.
But here's what I'm getting at. You know, I feel brands like, you know, Nusun, Vivint, you know, some of these ones that care about kind of where we're going, where we've come from, even though we have a vision of kind of what we want to go build. It is different. I think that this woke culture actually affects a little bit of the sales space where, like I said, I don't want to offend anyone, but I feel we're losing some of the killer instinct with all the sound baths. Like, I'm not trying to put the sound baths out of business, but I just don't get it. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. Let's go, you know, climb into a tent in the desert and like all talk about the whole person paradigm for the 100th time. Right now, literally people are canceling me, you know, as they're hearing me say this.
Kevin, I like the sound baths, dude. Get out of here.
But I'm just saying, it's just kind of like, you know, they're like the sports mindset, the leave no doubt, run it up. Like, hey, you know what I mean? It's like, talk is cheap, you know, let your game on the floor to the speed. It's just, it's a different time. And there's just part of me that says like, hey, I kind of want to stand for where we came from. That competitive, like Todd is like, hey, like I want to win.
Yeah.
I just, you know.
Well, it's kind of weird if you think about it.
And again, everyone, I might just be some old Uncle Rico that just isn't catching up, you know, with the therapy part of this.
The reason why you can kind of see that, at least from the point of view of like the guys that have like done it, most of the companies that are coming out now that are the successful ones are started by the dudes that were out in the trenches, right? I mean, Suntria is a good example. Suntria is ran by Cody Dable.
Yeah.
And he started this amazing company there.
He's ferocious.
He's ferocious.
Cody he's got the killer instinct. He's an athlete. I mean, I've played sports with him, seen him out there. How he does one thing is how he does everything.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about Cody, losing, the pass and like how it should propel us forward and protect that opportunity.
And that's the idea. Yeah. And I don't think I've mentioned this before, but he's the guy who I've hitched my boat to.
Oh, cool.
Like literally, like I've followed him everywhere.
Yeah.
And
love
so,
Cody.
But that's the thing. And I follow him because there's something about your guys' era. And I guess
the Rome. Yeah.
The Rome is something about that. And I came like right at the tail end of it, and I pride myself in that. But there's something about that, hey, for some reason or another, the companies that are getting started, even the new ones, the ones that are sticking around are the ones that are being started by the guys that you're working with now, Cody Babel and a couple of others.
Yeah, I think that, again, and like I said, the pie's big. You hear that all the time. Hey, abundance mindset. And I agree. Mm-hmm. But I give a lot of respect to some of these brands, which is something that I'm passionate about now, storytelling. A lot of times all people see is the competitions and the performance, which I love. Mm-hmm. But I love storytelling. I love building brands, and I love actually observing what people are choosing to do. Mm-hmm. I'll give you another thing. So Cameo shout out. So the Grit, right? The pest control sales company.
Yeah.
I love that they planted their flag. I think to truly be successful, one of the reasons that we were so successful at Vivint is because we had an identity until we a little bit didn't. Once everyone's like, it's a little bit time for all of us to kind of like explode to the next thing, which is natural. It's a natural course.
Absolutely.
But when we were all there and we all had this shared vision of just this, do it at the highest level with the highest level of competition, that I personally loved that. And that's what I know. And that's what I resonate with and I'm most comfortable with and perform my best when I'm in that environment, which is why I've chosen where I'm going.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's kind of that story.
No, that's perfect. And I think that, like you said, the pie is really big. Yeah. And there's so many guys that are operating at a huge level and different things. But I really love what you said just then where, something that Todd was amazing at doing was bringing guys towards him that were operating at a super high frequency, that wanted that had the dog in them, as they like to say.
All the dogs came to the yard.
That's right.
Yeah.
And, there's some guys that were ambitious and want to do it their own way. But I only imagine that those guys will look at what was happening and like, shoot, I kind of wish I could just be a part of that group too.
Yeah.
It's respectful of what they did on their own. Don't get me wrong. But I feel like that's a huge character trait. I think you embody it as well, where you go to a place and you operate at a high frequency. You challenge people. You're blunt with them. You're upfront with them to a point where everyone is lifting higher, operating better. And that it's kind of like a gravitational pull. You pull people into you that can also attribute to that.
Well, I'll give you an example. It's like, if you look on my Instagram, you can see, just sort of, I don't know what's going on in my head sometimes, but as I look back to my great mentors that I had, all those many years, they weren't afraid to be honest about it has to be a performance driven environment. Mm. And the reality is that when you've got someone on the stage on the mic that's like, hey, if you don't want to do it the highest level, the right way, like all those things, it's going to get really uncomfortable for you. And I do think that's a lesson for life. It's kind of a famous quote. I see it, pinned up nicely on people's stories. Yeah. But the main punchline is, mediocre talent or mediocre effort, high performers, like they don't like that. Mm-hmm. And people that, want to kind of go at half speed, they don't really enjoy being around high performers. Like it's not a good environment. You see Kobe Bryant talking about it. It's just like, get out of practice. I don't care. You know what I mean? Like for us to get where we're going to go, like I'm not going to be someone you like, you know what I mean? If you're not willing to put in the effort.
Absolutely.
And I do think that, that sometimes people can be confused where it's like, hey, we'll put our arm around you and tell you everything that feels good. And like, it's kind of these higher ideals. And sometimes it's like, you truly need to be saying, like, hey, it's pretty, cutthroat. And, if they were handing out like big financial rewards, like easily, then, that's just not real life.
No.
And so a lot of people kind of memorialize the pain and suffering on the doors and the sacrifice. And my big thing is like, truly, if you're going to do this job and know some of the side effects and some of the hard things it can put you through as an individual, it can put your family through, the schedule itself, can take a real toll. Man, make sure that when you look around the room that you're doing it with people you believe you should be with. And that's why I say it's abundant pie, because to be honest, there are individuals at some of these companies I maybe have mentioned, they'd get chewed up and spit out, at somewhere else, but also they can go do a version of it that they want to do and it's more comfortable and it works.
Yeah.
And then those individuals that want to do it, at a different place on that way. So it's kind of, again, about knowing yourself and plugging in like where it works.
Well, that's entrepreneurship at its core too.
Yeah.
There's a problem that needs to be solved, and there's 1,000 ways that you can solve it. And figuring out, knowing yourself and figuring out a way to solve a problem in a way that works for you and gets the job done. And then pulling people to you that operate in that same level in that same way is huge. For Todd, for Vivint Culture, we've talked about how that was and what the culture was like, and it worked in that way.
But at the end of the day, this is what I would tell my team. And if my team's listening, they'll remember this. I said, we have a job to do. Straight, we have a job to do. And sometimes as human beings, fatigue makes a coward out of everyone. No money makes a coward out of everyone. Hunger makes a coward out of everyone. I'm the exact same. But there are these moments like their only way through is through.
Yeah.
Period.
The problem has to be solved.
That's right. And so sometimes as a procrastinator and late to everything, it's like, it's scary to be like, I know the one thing I need to do to get out of this, but I'm scared to do it. So I'm going to kind of do these other things and create movement and motion. And it's like, dude, just gut up and go respond.
Yeah.
When Todd said life responds to effort, I also think that it's like, the response you give to adversity, like remember I said, we have a job to do, just do it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's amazing. Well, I mean, you've obviously been just so impactful in this industry, and it sounds like you're not done. Like
no.
It's so funny. I hit you up. I saw you live Vivint,
no.
and I hit you up. I'm like, oh, cool. Like, let's have you on the podcast and talk about what your next level is.
Now that I'm retired.
And you're right back into it. From when I hit you up until now, you're already back into it.
Yeah. Well, you had to look at my, my posts, which, like I said, I've gotten so much support and just amazing, everyone. I really did. And I want to say this kind of publicly. It's like when I told everyone I was leaving and I had the meeting with the partners and then I met with my team. Yes, there was some tears. Yes, there was like, what in the heck is happening? And by the time you kind of get through it and then you get home, and I got home about 3 and 4 in the afternoon, I was by myself. And, I was super melancholy and just everything felt kind of like dark and alone. And to be honest, I just felt super sad. Like just the change in knowing like, hey, it's going to be up and down and everything. But just once I'd done that day, it was super anticlimactic. I was like, I just felt like literally like, okay, walk away and that's it. And it's almost like you didn't exist.
Yeah.
And then I did my post that just kind of like told everyone that I was leaving, and just the words of support. And this is where I kind of bring it back. I've been building communities my whole career. I'm not hating on them. I'm being sarcastic. Trust me. Like, I'm sure we'll be doing some sound baths this year for that industry. But what I'm saying is that I did the post, and then just the bulldoze of love that came in, that was a really, really special to me. That was a really special moment. And it actually gave me the closure I needed to get, like you say, how did that happen so fast? At the very end of my post, it said like, hey, I have a lot left in the tank, like,
I did see that. Yeah.
And I do. And, one of my best mentors who has been there for me in all the key moments, Todd Santiago, the CRO.
Oh yeah.
Unbelievable guy. It's been so cool to see him just crush it and be so successful. And if you ever listen to his story, like he's OG on OG compared to even me, and I go way back. He goes way back. But he told me, he's like, Kevin, I know this is going to be impossible for you to see. And it's weird when you're, I got a kid knocking for us, just like he does, Michael.
Yeah.
My son, Asher, his son, Michael. Mm-hmm. So you're like, how does this sound like you're just beginning? He's like, Kevin, you've got to understand, like, you're in your prime. You know what I mean? It's just like, you've got to go and take a chance to apply everything, to get to the next level. I mean, it's almost a moment of truth. It's like, are you for
Yeah.
real? Do you have the courage to see what's right in front of you? If you have the faith to walk out in the dark a little bit. We kind of talked about that for about a year, you know what I mean? Before I dipped.
Mm-hmm.
And he was always encouraging me to quote unquote, try the marketplace,
Wow.
cause I was like, he could see
saw
I was
so
getting
much in you.
restless,
Well, he saw so much in you.
Yeah. And so I appreciate, he's always got that special place for me because, I couldn't have gotten where I needed to go after
Mhm.
being at a place so long. It's scary as crap. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But for 18 months, we kind of talked to me, coached me, mentored me. And then finally we kind of said, hey, it's the right time.
Wow. That's amazing. Do you have any other kind of big projects or side things that you're doing upcoming?
I've always, had dreams of, starting some type of an apparel brand that feels like it fits.
Yeah.
So I've kind of got this concept.
I could see that 100%.
Yeah. So I've got a concept that I'm sort of working on, but to be honest, Nusun is my singular focus. And so if there's space, that doesn't take away from what I'm trying to go make happen with the partners over there, then I 100% will get my entrepreneur going.
Yeah.
But it may just be a little LinkedIn flex that never turns anything. It's called Sparta. It's like right there, it says owner.
Yeah.
That's what that is. It's the fashion brand of dreams.
Yeah. So, okay. Yeah, that's amazing. And sometimes usually just a little passion project like that usually blows up more than you can even imagine.
Yeah. Or it kind of, it gives you a nice kind of well-rounding when you're grinding. Like I said, we have a job to do and it's hard. And some days work, we don't want any part of it. And so some of these other things on the side, it's kind of like, hey, that was a fun pile of money that I burnt,
Yeah, just kidding. Yeah. Well, it gave me a little bit of satisfaction to burn that, I suppose. Kevin, I feel like we could just pull lesson after lesson from your stories. Man, I just really appreciate you coming on and being honest and candid with us and sharing, the things that you've learned over an amazing career.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. It's been a real pleasure and honestly, it's a fun conversation. And I just kind of, again, want to end with, anyone who's listened to what I said, it's like, I truly have abundance and love in my heart. And I tease, I joke, but I mean, honestly, who doesn't? Yeah. You know what I mean? I'm kind of being at least upfront about it on the mic versus doing it behind people's backs, but it's like, I just joke around, you know what I mean? Wow. Like, obviously, I do wish everyone to have success because, you should be in business, hopefully for happiness. And I think, as corny as that sounds, that's the best part, when I've been coming home, to my loved ones and, you get insecure when they're just like, you seem so happy. And you're like, I've always been happy. What are you talking about? And it's just like there's something about, feeling really good about what you just did, but feeling really excited about what's coming up in the future. Yeah. And that's exactly kind of where I am for this little moment. So I'm enjoying it for sure.
Yeah. I'm excited to see Kevin Swiss keep blowing up, man.
Okay. Thank you for having me on, dude.
Thank you for coming. Appreciate it.
Awesome.